The third lunar reaction is finally here. Version 6.3 is releasing 3 new characters, Columbina, Zibai, and Illuga. All of them are going to be units who have ties to the new reaction, Lunar-Crystallize. And while everyone is probably going to be talking about the new characters, this video will focus on the reaction itself. What exactly is Lunar-Crystallize? How is it different from regular Crystallize? And does it do anything to improve older characters? We're going to discuss all these questions in this video, but before we begin, I have additional info down below, and captions are available if you need them. Without further ado, let's get started. To start off, let's explain how Lunar-Crystallize works. Just like the other reactions, it'll be enabled when certain characters are in the party. In the case of this reaction, the current certain characters are Columbina or Zibai. Despite being a Geo Krai character and someone whose kit focuses on Lunar-Crystallize, Illuga himself will not enable this reaction. Lunar-Crystallize is specifically a Hydro-Crystallize rework, so every other element is going to do the regular Crystallize stuff. Upon triggering, you'll spawn 3 Moondrifts. When you trigger Lunar-Crystallize 3 more times, each of the Moondrifts deal Geo damage, which is considered as Lunar-Crystallize damage. Just like Lunar Charged, the damage will pool the elemental mastery and crit stats of every Hydro and Geo character who contributes to the reaction. The multipliers are a little different, but the formula itself is practically the same. What makes this reaction unique from the other two is that its properties are directly tied to how fast you can trigger Lunar-Crystallize. With Lunar Charged, the thundercloud strikes at a consistent rate of 2 seconds. With Lunar Bloom, you can only get 1 Verdant Dew every 2.5 seconds. Both of these can have insanely fast rates of application, but ultimately, their damage and utility is locked behind a cooldown. With Lunar-Crystallize, there is no cooldown or interval aspect involved. If you run teams with faster application, you'll trigger the Moondrifts faster for more frequent Lunar-Crystallize damage. And I really like this aspect of the reaction. It works with any team who provides consistent Hydro and Geo application, but it specifically rewards teams who have faster triggers. Lunar-Crystallize didn't go in the same direction as Lunar Bloom, where it creates Hydro shards on top of the Moondrifts. It outright replaces the Hydro shards. So without basic changes, anything that relied on Crystallize shards would be useless. Just like the other 2 Lunar reactions, there were a few things that were done to accommodate this change. The first is what we've usually seen, where Lunar-Crystallize is added to some general reaction abilities. For example, Yunjin C4 now procs her defense bonus when she triggers Crystallize or Lunar-Crystallize. Same idea with Nuvolit's A1 passive giving the Draconic stacks. Basically, for abilities that previously focused on triggering Crystallize, this is nothing special. But for abilities that relied on characters picking up Crystallize shards or having a Crystallize shield, the changes for Lunar-Crystallize also served as a much more convenient alternative for existing units or gear. For example, Navia's main form of getting stacks was holding her skill to pull in and collect Crystallize shards. Since Hydro shards can't exist in Lunar-Crystallize teams, she gets a stack simply when someone triggers the reaction. The amount of stacks you get are the same, but this does save you the trouble of having to hold her skill to collect the shards. Navia players can simply do her tap skill in these teams, which might shorten rotation times. Her signature weapon Verdict was also changed so that the user gets the skill damage stacks by simply triggering the reaction. What about some of the artifacts? Archaic Petra used to be that the user had to pick up Crystallize shards in order to proc the damage bonus. Unless you had someone who pulled in the shards, it was a little bit annoying to run around to grab them. Lunar-Crystallize can't create shards, so getting a Hydro bonus in these teams just requires the user to trigger the reaction. The user still has to be on field, but they wouldn't have to take up extra field time in the process. I don't really expect this quality of life change to suddenly become a meta option for Archaic Petra, but if you're already playing someone who's currently using the set, you can rest assured they can use it much more efficiently in the Lunar teams. Nighttime Whispers is the other big one, and I found this to be a lot more interesting. The set grants 50% Geo damage bonus, 20% after casting a skill, and if you're protected by a Crystallize shield, you get an additional 30% to max out the 50% bonus. Once again, Lunar-Crystallize doesn't create shards, and by proxy, it doesn't create shields. But instead of going in the same direction where you trigger the reaction, the Geo bonus now maxes out if the user is near a moondrift. It's once again made to accommodate the new changes, but it's also much easier to maintain this bonus in a lunar team. Crystallized shields are fragile. Depending on the enemies you fight, this may or may not be an issue, but for lunar teams, this will never be an issue. As far as I know, moondrifts don't have a durability or hitbox, and therefore cannot be destroyed. You'll trigger the reaction frequently enough, so there should be no issues with them disappearing on their own, and as such, the full 50% bonus should always be present when you need it. This mechanic also applies to a Geo Resonance buff. The damage bonus and Geo Res Shred now works if the unit is either protected by a shield, or if they're near a moondrift. Everything I've talked about earlier was just the base level changes they made. That way, all Crystallize related buffs can stay relevant with the new Lunar-Crystallize changes. I really do like that these changes are actually more convenient to proc compared to old Crystallize, but the second aspect of this reaction is a unique mechanic that I found much more interesting. Moondrifts are considered Geo Constructs. A lot of Geo characters can create constructs already, but it's not too often we see characters make use of other Geo Constructs. So, first one you might think of is Chiori. She can summon a second Tomoto doll whenever a Geo Construct is nearby. With Moondrifts now being able to count towards this passive, playing Chiori in any Lunar-Crystallize team means she's no longer reliant on other Geo characters to get her second doll. If you want to run her with Zibai, her enabling Lunar-Crystallize is all you need for Chiori. And if you want to do a solo Geo team with Chiori and Columbina, the same mechanic works there. But we can expand on this idea a little bit further. One of our upcoming characters in this version is Illuga. His burst provides Geo damage and Lunar-Crystallize damage bonuses. This is a quill system, similar to Shenhe or Lauma. He starts off at 21 stacks, but he'll get 5 more stacks for every Geo construct that's present, up to a max of 15 stacks or 3 Geo constructs. Moondrifts count as Geo constructs, but to specify it further, each Moondrift is its own Geo construct. Similar to how Chiori won't have to rely on construct characters in Lunar-Crystallize teams, Illuga also doesn't rely on them. Every Moondrift counts towards 1 stack of its bonus already. The final character who would really benefit from this is Zhongli. His pillar is able to resonate with other Geo constructs, allowing him to deal more damage to nearby enemies. With each of the Moondrifts being constructs, he basically quadruples his skill damage output if all the resonance attacks hit. But this mechanic also heavily speeds up his Geo application. I won't get too in-depth with the ICD details, but Zhongli has a standard ICD of 2.5 seconds or 3 hits. The Moondrifts resonating with the pillar create 3 additional instances of Geo damage, and this occurs every 2 seconds. Because there are 4 instances of Geo damage, Zhongli bypasses the 3-hit limit, and is capable of applying Geo way more often than before. To really simplify the comparison, Zhongli without Geo constructs can only apply Geo once every 4 seconds, but with Moondrifts on the field, he can apply Geo 3 times every 4 seconds. As such, he can trigger Crystallize and Lunar-Crystallize 3 times in this period. And as mentioned before, the faster you can hit the 3 Lunar-Crystallize triggers, the more damage you can dish out. The only problem is that his pillar still gets destroyed really easily. Hopefully, like the Hexarite buffs, we get Liyue-style buffs that can address the same issue. Overall, I really like how this reaction works, and I'd go as far as to say that this is my favorite of the Lunar reactions we have so far. They didn't just revamp an old reaction like with Lunar Charged, or add on to it like with Lunar Bloom. Because Lunar-Crystallize doesn't create Hydro Shards or shields, this would be an example of a completely new reaction. And if they can specifically rework Hydro-Crystallize but not the other elemental variants, then a Hydro Swirl rework into Lunar Swirl may not be off the table. And if in the future they decide to create reworked reactions for other elements, then it would imply each version of Crystallize will have its own unique mechanics. If the devs don't, I will. I already have a couple ideas jotted down. and hint hint, an electro-crystallize video might not actually be that far off in the future. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on Lunar-Crystallize, and if you plan to pull for either Columbina or Zibai, let me know what kind of Lunar-Crystallize teams you plan to try out. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and subscribe to support the channel. And given the timing of this video, I hope everyone here has a happy new year and an even better 2026. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!